Okay. It is, yes. I'll put it in the chat, the song, but I'll also put it in for those of you in Unleashed, I'll put it in our playlist. Yeah, totally. Oh, it's already in there. Of course it is. All right. So as we come into the space and into what each of us, each of you is experiencing on this inner level, I was just sharing a little bit before I turned the recording on about just learning the language of the body. And what I mean is specifically learning how to kind of name, where we are, even though it seems very silly or it seems like, why would we do that? But, when you're somebody who is living or exploring the more deeper aspects of what it means to be alive, to be of service, to live in love, these are shamanic tools that we all need, to really be able to integrate the intensity of, love, the intensity of aliveness. Um, and I think learning these languages, which is something that, we share a little bit here in these free offerings every month, but we also go deeper into in our trainings, really supports us in getting free, right? Because as we learn, for example, I was just talking about, free is and what that means, because it's kind of the main, I think, energy that one of the main energies that we really work with, because it's very connected to shame, and a lot of us really came here to liberate ourselves and one another from shame. And, you know, I also notice that when people are on a spiritual path for a period of time, that at some point, sometimes they actually start experiencing different levels of freeze. Like you kind of start doing a practice and you start experiencing all this liberation. And then at some point, you start getting stuck, right? And I think that stuckness is, but there's Ali and B can do it too, just so you know, you don't have to. But um, that stuckness, it's like freeze is different than collapse, right? Like freeze is when we have a lot of energy inside, but there's this feeling like we can't move. So sometimes that manifests as like, oftentimes our first reaction is anxious, anxiety, like fear, right? We start separating ourselves. And in Body Temple, and I think in general, when doing somatic work, it's really important that we don't take on whatever it is that we're experiencing spiritually or somatically as an identity, because ultimately these things are helping us get free of our identities. And this is something that, we wanted to talk a little bit about today, because some of you are starting our 9-month Unleash training. And inside that, it's like, there's these dual kind of teachings where it's like on one end we want to really learn, like, who am I, like, as a person, like as a personality, who, like, what am I supposed to be doing in the world, and how can I just be free to do that, like, to not feel afraid to, like, there's actors in this space, there's teachers, there's healers, there's therapists, like people that are doing work in the world, there's yogis and people that are really devoted to a path. And it's like, how can we just be a person and be free to do that, which is a process for most of us, in itself. And then at the same time, I think we build certain identities, even when they're like, I'm unworthy, I'm terrible at receiving, right? These identities that we've come into based on things that, are not our fault, but that also help us in this weird way feel safe, actually. Like some part of me feels really safe being like an unworthy person, a person unworthy of true love, right? Like that is like such a main, like a deep wound. A person, let's say, that is unworthy to express myself freely, right? Like I have this Chiron and Mercury in Taurus, like I have this like, whoa, this like voice, like this wound of like speaking the truth and my truth, and like speaking what's authentic, like what's going to open us, not just, cause more constriction. So when you're thinking about that for yourself, it's like there's these identities. And then actually, at some point, in the beginning, it's so important to like, what does make me feel safe, right? It makes me feel safe, to know that I'm a mystic and to know that I feel, more devoted to the unseen realms than I do sometimes. It's easier for me to feel more devoted to the unseen realms than it is the seen realm sometimes, you know, like that experience. And like that feeling of like connection to other humans can actually be more challenging than to me than connecting to God, right? Like these are also things that I like kind of know and that make me feel like, okay, I know this about myself, and that's okay, right? That creates space. And I also want to challenge whatever it is that I kind of come up against and come up into in my world. So, you know, I wanted to start just by giving some space as we go into, you know, this powerful ceremony to like see like what are the identities that we want to challenge, or what are the identities, even the ones that we really love, right? Like some of us couldn't express ourselves, you know, in certain ways when we were young, and so then as we become older, and whether it's our orientation or gender, like so many things that like we were misunderstood around, that then once we come into it we're like, oh, there's a relief, right? But ultimately I think when we hit those edges of like stuckness, what we want to do is, you know, create a space where we can also like be free of that temporarily, like be free of whatever that identity is. You know, I'm somebody who gets stuck, I'm in freeze, for example, you know what I mean? And just learning about like what that means and what sensations I'm having is actually what is starting to create more space. And we're starting in the Body Temple Unleashed training, connecting to making space. So that's our main intention with this. But like what are the identities that you want to like make space to let go of? You know, like what are the identities you want to make space to like uplift, you know, and like just exploring some of, you know, what that is for you. And, you know, I wanted to bring Harshita in, you know, to this conversation around, you know, this coming full moon. I feel like we've been doing these like right before the full moon. Because I was joking with Ali and B earlier, just saying I always do these when I'm PMS. It's like it must be always like right before the full moon. That's generally when I'm pre-moon. So, anyways, because I was like, oh, where's this? And then I was like, oh my gosh, I'm always doing these fire ceremonies when I'm PMS. But, anyways, you know, Harshit and I went to see Amma, this the hugging saint. Many of you probably know Amma. And, you know, one of the things that really stuck out to me in reflection upon getting, you know, she's Harshita, maybe can tell you a little bit more about her if you want, but that really stuck out to me about the experience of like receiving her and receiving a hug was the emotion, right? And like we all experienced, me and Harshita and the other person we were with, like emotion. And how like when you come into contact with unconditional love or Shakti in that like pure power energy way, somehow it like releases emotion. And you know, that's not true for everybody, but I think it's true for a lot of us, right? And there's something about that, like the unbound energy and how it, you know, can connect us to the unboundness that's within us that can sometimes come with like the release of an emotion, um or the stirring up of energy, you know what I mean? Like what we were just talking about, like this feeling of like, you know, this energy inside. And just that whole process of transformation when we encounter unconditional love. And so I would love if you just, you know, wanted to share a little bit about that, like that piece of Amma, and like what you think about that. Cause I was just thinking about that from like on the spiritual path, how so many times when I've felt connected to God, it like makes me cry. And there's this like emotional body that like reveals itself as this deep connector. And then also, yeah, just, you know, anything about Guru Purnima, which is the moon that's coming up, and yeah, anything else that you want to add to that. And I'll read some of what's in the chat.
Yeah, yeah, that's beautiful.
Hold on, let me just put. Okay. I had music on.
Yeah, so yeah, that's beautiful. So Amma, she's also called Amrita Anandamaya Ma, is this, you know, great South Indian saint. And, you know, people call her the hugging saint because that's one of the ways that she like transmits her energy when she's on tour. And, you know, she'll sit and receive everyone coming up and she'll embrace them. And so that's the thing that she's become known for. And it is like, different people have different experiences, of course, but it is this experience of coming in contact with the divine, because as the guru, she represents a human who is totally in touch with the divine. And it's like the rest of us kind of come in and out of that in touchness. We'll have moments of being in touch with it and then moments of being totally alienated from it. So, the guru in that sense, when it's a legitimate thing, I mean, there's also tons of fake gurus too, but when it's a legitimate guru, or a legitimate expression of that guru energy, really is what it is. It's like you're relating to a human, but I'm sorry, it's just real distracting when you're doing that. I lost my train of thought. So when you're relating to the guru, it's like you're relating to a human, but that human in that moment has become like a portal. And there is a thing of unconditional love, and especially with her, I mean, different great beings have like different transmissions, and with her, definitely unconditional love is like is a big part of it. But it's not like the unconditional love we get from our grandma or something. It's like it can stir, like Adriana is saying, like this emotional response, but it's not just like, oh, somebody gave me this really nice birthday present and I'm just like overwhelmed with the love of it. It's like what's happening in that moment. And this is ultimately what's happening in that guru principle, which it doesn't necessarily have to have a human guru for. It's like all of us on this path, as we're moving into it in a serious way, are going from another kind of freeze into from fixity into flow, as we talk about in Body Temple. But this other kind of freeze is that there's an intelligence in us that's called Kundalini Shakti. And ordinarily, like in ordinary life, that intelligence is just for relating to the world and relating to material things. And it gets fixed in that state. It gets frozen in that state. And then when we come in contact with the guru principle, however that happens, then there's an awakening that happens. People talk about Kundalini awakening. What that means is that freeze goes from only being connected to the material world and material things. And like Adriana was talking about, like, who am I? Like, like, am I okay? Are people going to love me? Am I good? Am I bad? Like that sort of thing. It's frozen in that, you could say. And it becomes unfrozen then to be able to relate to God, relate to the divine, relate to the goddess and everything. And internally, that means that now it's not just who am I, but it's what am I? And it's not just a theoretical or philosophical question, it's experiential. And we get to experience that we are that divine energy as that unfreezes. And so that's what we make space for within the context of the spiritual path. It's not just a matter of like psychology or personal development. That's important because those pieces need to be like unfrozen and unfucked in a certain way, because we do get all jammed up living in society and families and everything like that. So those things have to get unpacked and unjammed. But ultimately, we're here for this divine experience. We're here to experience God in everything and everything in God, and that divine energy is what our essence is. And that's that intelligence in us, that Kundalini Shakti, has to be awakened for that experience to happen. And so that's what we're doing.
And I feel like, especially a lot of people in this community, like that energy is awakened. And from there, I think then, the practice is like, even when we get into these like more personal things and afflictions, sometimes I think that that's happening, or I know, because, from working with myself and people for so long, it's like, because we're not honoring that piece of divinity within us, because we're not like, I mean, you all are, you're literally here. We're talking to you. So you're literally coming to take an hour out of your Thursday or whatever day it is to like focus on this great power, you know, sacred living feminine power energy, right? That's right here within you, and orienting towards that, right? And we do this in this practice today with fire, right? Other times we do it through movement, other times we do it through meditation, other times, you know, but ultimately, whatever goddess we're chanting to, whatever God, you know, that there is this essence that we're connecting to within all of it that doesn't change, that isn't just like, oh, well, this got Lakshmi is for worth, and, you know, Lalita, you know, is this orgasmic energy of the universe, right? Like these are and Saraswati is the intuitive wisdom of nature, and poems and songs and writing. And it doesn't mean those fields, those portals, right? Like what Harshita said about Amma, I think that there's also that with the goddesses, they like open this portal to this consciousness that all of a sudden you didn't have access to, and then you do. I think in my experience, that's true, right? And at its essence, right, the thing that makes it long lasting and sustainable and also helps us deal with really big stuff like deaths and births and, you know, just the whole human experience that can be so intense and so overwhelming. But some part of each of us is here because we know that, you know, we're here for that soul evolution. And that we're not just here for the personal, but that's like a huge part of the connection to the soul. Like there's certain work that certain soul evolution that I feel like can't happen when I'm not tending to the personal. Like to me, they are really fluid because my soul starts to feel stifled if I'm ignoring certain parts of my life. Like that's just the way it is for me. Everybody's different. Obviously, there's lots of gurus in the world that is not the case with, but for me, it's like really, yeah, interwoven.
And lots of seekers that's not the case with. And, you know, like if you're new here, if we don't have many things that are like forbidden, but like spiritual bypass, you could put on that list of don'ts. If we have do's and don'ts, maybe we could say we have some do's and don'ts. Don'ts is spiritual bypass. Don'ts is, well, everything is consciousness. So, you know, my shitty behavior is excusable because I'm just teaching you a lesson on your path, brother. You know, like that kind of stuff is like, no.
Yeah.
And like spiritual bypass can also be using the practices as coping mechanisms,
yeah,
or as escape mechanisms to avoid dealing with our neurosis and our wounding and all that kind of stuff. Because man, you know, when I'm on that yoga mat and I'm, you know, doing my satnams or whatever, it's just like nothing can touch me. And like, let me just be on that yoga mat as much as possible. That also is like a don't.
That's why I leave my yoga mat like out in the living room all the time. He's like, can't you put it away? And I'm like,
so
no,
ugly. I appreciate yoga mats, but just like from a decoration point of view, the yoga mat is just so ugly. And there's like smell, you know, it's like this, like basically like foot sweat sponge. It's like, and it's like worn out and like disgusting rubber rectangle in the middle of our beautiful
I like
home.
to leave it out because it makes me feel like safe or something, or like I'm going to do more yoga or something, and I don't. Anyways, we're digressing. So
we should do do's and don'ts though.
No,
for
I
body
hate
temple
that.
Maha Yoga. No, we should.
We could do it as an experiment and see what happens.
Do be unconditionally loving to yourself. Don't
There are do's and
ignore
don'ts,
your character defects.
Anyways, so we want to just pause and sweaty sponge on my living room floor. Yeah. What what does this mean to you? Like, you know, a lot of you are yoga teachers or yogis or yoginis, and, you know, it's like, what do you want to learn, you know, about this, or where is your soul on its journey of awakening? You know, and then also this human piece of like, you know, that frees. And I think the reason why I keep bringing that up, because one, we're kind of working with making space, right? And whenever we have more space or we encounter an expansion of some sort, we oftentimes then, not oftentimes, we always experience constriction. That's the way our system works, right? We expand and then we also constrict. And a lot of times in the constriction, there is this sense that like, there's a lot of energy in here. And I think this happens with Kundalini awakening, right? And then it feels like we're stuck. We're either stuck in some area of our life, or we're stuck in our body in some way, or we get an injury, or we just feel like I can't do it. Like I'm overwhelmed, right? And what's happening is sometimes that Kundalini Shakti, right? It's like there is this intelligence to it and it knows where to go and it knows how to heal. Like it moves through our whole, all of our channels, our meridians, right? It's like moving through our nervous system and healing us from the inside out. And I also find that, even some of the somatic education, like I said, if we don't take it on as like an identity, but we take it as a part of this process of unlearning and of decolonizing our bodies and our minds from conditioning, it can really support us in being in relationship to that power and really learning actually how to work with it and how to be in relationship in the same way that working with the fire or working with a mantra does actually. That's my experience of, the somatics. It's like, this is another way for me to engage with that divine energy within me. Once I learn that, like, wow, it's not just like I'm stuck here because, there's some other identity. I'm somebody who can't do this. I'm, going on and on in the taking on more identities, but actually getting free of them. And so
it's kind of like sometimes, because the Kundalini Shakti, when it's awakened, is dynamic. It helps us if we're being dynamic too. Like we can catch it by ourselves, and that's why we do the body temple dance and the movement. And, we're dynamic, we're serving, we're loving, we're out there. And then sometimes it's a matter of, we have to get really still. We just have to shut up and stop and let the energy express itself and be quiet enough and soft enough to receive it. But that's the thing, is that it's dynamic. We don't say, this is what we do, we meditate like this, or this is what we do, we dance like this, or this is what we do this motion 55 times, all of those things. Huh?
Nothing. Keep
You
going.
like the sound of that.
Yeah.
All of those things might be remedies in a moment or not. It might be the remedy to sit and get quiet. And it might be the remedy to move your ass. And it might be the remedy to do some formal thing, do a alignment asana practice. It might be the remedy to completely break all alignment rules and roll around on the floor, holding corn cobs in your hands, or who knows? We can give you some suggestions, but ultimately it's this matter of being awake and being in relationship with that inner energy. And so then the fire, which we're going to light here in a moment, becomes its own thing. I mean, just hanging out with fire as an elemental being is such a powerful practice. I do it almost every day. And I've been doing it almost every day recently. It's incredibly powerful, and it's also symbolic. And for the Hindus, who do, very elaborate fire ceremonies, it's symbolic of the mouth of the divine that we're feeding the offerings. For us, this is informal fire ceremony called Duni. This isn't a yajna or a havan or these formal fire ceremonies. We do this informal thing from our tradition. It's called Duni. It's the fire could be representative of that Kundalini Shakti, of that awakened, God's everywhere, but it's dormant. The experience of it is dormant for most of us most of the time. So then the fire becomes symbolic of when that God experience is dynamic. I want to read the corn.
I know you
comments.
do. Well, Sarah also said, get a nice Manduka mat, something classy.
But did you see my response?
Oh, I didn't
It
know.
won't stay classy for very long.
Yeah, we really have a
Around
hard time
here,
with classy.
Get that black light out. All right.
Jane said that, oh yeah, I just did the corn cob roll yesterday. Allie is, yes. Yes. Marina said, makes me think of taking masks off.
Oh my God, yes.
Yes. Playing gongs with Corin Wen. Yeah, I've been so heavily, I'm just going to read one share just so we can connect with everyone. Or, I've been so heavily on this question of who
This
am
is from
I
Margot.
the last handful of months, and now I'm at a place of blah, I don't even know, and very little feels like the right label. What words can even capture it? And even when they do capture something true, some labels are so new that I'm almost uncomfortable touching it or saying it. Totally. I mean,
Yes.
thank you, Margot, for, I think everyone, and please share in the chat if you can relate to that, but I think most of us can, and it's like that, right? Like that's why I love looking at it, on the feminine path. Sometimes we see this as like these death and rebirth cycles, even within this one lifetime. Meaning like, when we're having these, letting go, this like deep sense of letting go of who we are and starting to uncover some new layers of it, it is like, it's so tender and it's so sacred. And
don't be in a hurry to put a label on it.
right, like grief
In
is
fact,
involved,
avoid the
and
labels.
yeah, it's like to be able to hold something that's so even unknown, right? I think it's also where that's like when you're onto something actually, right? Because if we're ultimately connecting to this great mystery, we're ultimately all like contending with this great unknown all the time. Like that's really valuable training and practice, I think, when we are in that space of like, oh, and even sensing like this new part of me, and how awkward it is. You know what I mean? I mean, that's why it's like so much of our training is just like, how awkward can we be just to like let everybody just be awkward? Because that's just always a part of this. That's just always a part of this work,
Awkward and unlabeled. I'm really glad that she said the label thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's once we get into mantra practice, once we get into kirtan practice. In our tradition, it's not a Saguna tradition. It's not a Hindu thing where it's like, okay, so God is this, and it's not that. It's Krishna, but it's not Shiva, or it's Goddess Lakshmi, but it's not Saraswati. And Lakshmi is like this, and Saraswati is like that. We use all of those distinctions and labels so that we can have a more like direct interaction, but we're not saying that's what the divine is. I mean, that's to say that to anything, even when we're, have small children, we were taught, don't tell them this is a tree. We say, we call this a tree. Because this isn't a tree. This is a miracle. This is like, this isn't a tree. We call it a tree so that we have something to call it. But it's not a tree. And in the same way, that's why the mantra is so great, because then we have a name that we can just say, Rama, 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 Om Namah Shivaya, Ma, Ma, Ma. Whatever the mantra is that we've been initiated into, it doesn't matter. It's not like one mantra is for this, the other mantra is for that. In our tradition, it's just like, this is the closest thing to an unlabeled label.
Unnameable name.
An unnameable name that we can use so that we have something we can utter, some vibration we can like connect to, instead of like me, that we're constantly repeating unconsciously. We're like, oh no, I'm not going to make it. Am I going to make it? Instead, we can just say, Ma, 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 Ma. And yeah, maybe we're connecting to the Divine Mother, but maybe we're just connecting to that like formless absolute that like, sometimes it's a mother, sometimes it's a father, sometimes it's a fire, sometimes it's a water, sometimes it's a drenching of blessing, sometimes it's an eruption of a volcano of Shakti within us. It's like, take the labels out and just let yourself be unformed.
Yeah.
We were trying to decide what mantra we were going to use for the ceremony today.
Speaking of.
and it's like in the Indian Hindu system, it's very specific because of where the moon is and the stars and the astrology. It's like, this mantra is the thing to repeat for this many times on this day and make these offerings to the fire. And in our tradition, it's more intuitive. And, our teachers have given us the liberty to feel our way into it with this understanding. And it's like, this isn't a combination lock. You know what I mean? This isn't like diffusing a bomb that we have to do it in a certain order or else it's going to blow up in our face. It's not like, oh, well, Ganesha, if his trunk is that way, is going to cause obstacles in your life. Fuck that. Like those things can be true if that's the Hindu thing that you're doing.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it's some people's paths.
it's some people's
there's
path.
some lineages that are totally like that, and
Yes.
we honor and respect that. And
Totally.
obviously that's not what we're sharing. So there's not,
Right.
you know,
So it's
that mentality is not going to help you here. It might help you somewhere else.
Exactly.
And that's totally okay. And we're just, here, that's only going to get in our way, you know, to really ignore the reality that you already, also that you know, that there isn't this like, okay, well, this thing, like getting this answer, as opposed to like continuing to die into the unknown
into the question.
and into the question
Yeah.
that doesn't have an answer, like whatever question you're holding, right? So maybe let's just pause there and we'll get set up. We'll do some stretching, a little bit of breath practice, but just like tune in and just write down in your journal for a minute, or in the chat, and you can always copy and paste it from your chat if you like sharing there. What's coming up for you around this? Like what is coming into your intuition, right? Because we are obviously here to share, and you have your own insights and knowings, inner knowings. Like what is your soul need in this moment? Let's just really fucking go for it. Like with this ceremony, it's like, what do you really need in this moment? What miracle do you need? What like let it be intense.
What emancipation do you need?
Yeah.
Like what do you need to be freed from? Like what subtractive process can you get in?
Yeah.
It's like we go to ask for the blessing. Let me have this. Like fucking let me be relieved of this. Please take this. This is also the thing.
Yeah.
But I just want to add one more thing to what we were saying. It's like somebody said, yeah, fuck that. Yes. And I want to be careful sometimes. I don't want to be cavalier and disrespectful.
Mm-hmm.
It's not when I'm saying, let's not get caught in this or caught in that. We're still into like going hardcore. It's like, let's see if we can be hardcore. Let's see if we can really go for it with our spiritual practice without getting caught in something that's like overly specific and superstitious. But still, it's not just like, well, let's just be sloppy and just do whatever.
No, I mean, if you see like literally, if you just like look at what is on our altar, it's like, it's not like, there's like a whole crew, you know what I mean? Like we say all this, we're like so non-dual. And then like here, there's like, this is a really good one. But just like, to mention that there's, this is Amma, the hugging saint we were telling you about. This is Anandamayi. Like we also have these great like beings and these unseen forces and energies that we've been graced and blessed by. Like this is Hanuman. This is our altar. Just showing you guys before as we're transitioning. This is the goddess is down here. Hold on. Can I see what I'm doing? And then we have Ganesha. Speaking of Ganesha. Shit, I don't know if I'm showing it. Okay, anyways. And then this is Durga. Hold on, where am I? Okay. Durga is here. That's like the main. Some of you have been to our house. It's kind of nice to show you. And then here's all these other wild saints and beings. These are the sandals. I mean, I'm just showing you because obviously we're like walking contradictions. And one of my favorite spiritual teachers, Mirabai Starr, always says every good mystic is like, lives in contradiction, basically. And I don't necessarily see it as a contradiction entirely, but I think it's important to just name, the polarities and also the paradoxes, that we're like continually dancing in, the dual and then the non-dual, and how these things are also like one and the same when we're like really being with them in a deep way. What? That's funny to you? Because I'm like,
I'm just feeling joyous.
Oh,
watching
great.
you.
Okay. All right. So do you want to start the fire and then I'll share some stretching and things?
But just remember the fire is
Time.
We've only got so much time.
Okay. Okay. So let's do this. Let's have everybody just kind of shift around in your seat a little bit and just kind of wiggle out. And just notice again, like what are you noticing in your body? And we're just going to do a little bit of rocking in your seat. So you can just hold on to your knees or just bring your hands to your thighs and just do a little bit of movement in your spine, just arching your spine, looking up, and then rounding your spine. Finding that fluctuation. And just let that kind of subtle and more slow movement in your spine just take you into like what's underneath. Maybe you were noticing what was coming up in your body and your mind, but as we move, right, the movement, even a simple movement like this, is going to start to reveal something else. And then we'll just bring a little breath into it. So you're just going to inhale as you arch your spine through your nose, and then exhale out of your mouth. Oh. Just preparing your body a few more times like that. And you can even bring some circles as you're doing it into your rib cage or your hips. Make a little sound like ah. And then you can let your head and your neck just start to make some circles gently in one direction, but let your spine and your hips kind of follow it. So it's not just isolated to your head, but your shoulders and then the middle of your spine is going to move in response to your head and neck if you move it in a more complete way. And then go in the other direction, just gently being super gentle with your neck. And if for some reason you can't do this, like you have a neck injury or there's something you can't do, you can just imagine it. Just close your eyes, breathe, and just imagine your body making some of these spiral movements here in your spine. And you could wiggle your toes, move your wrists around. When we're working with any stuckness, whatever's between you and that deeper authentic truth or vulnerability, there's a couple different approaches working with freeze. One of them is to just really make some space and move slow, like a bear coming out of hibernation. Sometimes we do more active, like fight practices that also help with it. But today we're just going to see what it's like to just move a little bit slower and even yawn for this last part of this. Like there's some part of you that's just like, I've been asleep or exhausted for years. Make it kind of like, and then just pause, letting your body be a little bit more still. Unless you feel like you want to sway, you can do that. If you have a pillow or something soft nearby, you can always put it in your lap or hold it onto your belly. And just pause for a moment and just tune in with what we were sharing. Like, what's something that you're really offering that's connected to your soul's evolution and process of being of service to your work in the world or to the ways that you're relating? Like, what are you being asked to learn and allowing you to have this space to offer it in a sacred way, in an intentional way, in community, which amplifies that power and your desires. So what we're going to do is we're going to share a mantra and we're going to offer these herbs, and we have some rice here and some different herbs that we're going to offer to the fire. And we'll do the mantra, and then you can do the mantra with us if you'd like. It's kind of nice to do it with us. So we're kind of, all doing it. You do it out loud. What? Oh. Okay, so yeah, we're gonna we're gonna connect to this mantra of Lakshmi. And I would love if you're not too familiar with Lakshmi yet, we share all about her and who she is and all that in lots of different ways and spaces. But I would love to just offer it, and you could see what you notice, right? If you're not that familiar. The mantra, and Ali can put it, or B can put it in the chat, is Om Shreem, like SHREEM, or IM, right? EEM, SHREM. Maha means great. Maha, MAHA. Lakshmi, which is Lakshmi, Namaha. So it's like imagining just like lying your body down, like giving everything over to the earth, to this fire, to this moment, right? And like bringing everything you have to this moment. Like if this was the last time you could offer prayers, like how fully would you, allow yourself to be here for these next 10 minutes or so? And we'll do the mantra 108 times, and we'll do it all out loud, I think. Okay. And Harshit is going to be offering some ghee as we go. Okay, ready? Om Shri Mahalakshmiye Namaha. 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 Om Shri Mahalakshmiye Namaha.
Gachate Pranasya Pramadaya Pranamivava Shishate Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu
Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So you can just let yourself take a moment here in silence to just communicate with the fire. just like to be in relationship with this sacred fire, this sacred energy. And just to take this moment to close this ceremony, we're going to do just two things. And the first piece that I want you to just connect for a moment and ask for a message, or ask for a gift or a piece of something that you might need, like from the fire, and see when you ask for a message, like see what arises, right? And there is no right or wrong. Sometimes an image comes up or an idea, even, like don't discount anything. A feeling, a sensation, sometimes just nothingness and just space is there. But let's make a moment where that's permitted. What does she want to share with you? It's just for your journey. And then the second piece, once that flows, or you can stay with it if it's enjoyable. But I want you to allow yourself to connect to the thing, whatever it is that arises for you in your own human experience that you really want to get rid of, that feels like what we were talking about. It's like, I want to like release this. I'm tired of this, or that feeling. And just as an experiment, we're just going to see what happens when we just make space for it and we actually allow it, whatever that, like if you imagine, even if there's like a pain or something physically in somatic work, we connect to it as a part of you, right? Some younger part that's calling for attention. Any unpleasant sensation is really like that in this work. So to just take this last minute to close by allowing the things that you generally try to push away about yourself or about your experience, and actually let it in, even if it's just 3% or 5% into this moment. And maybe if there's some constriction in your body, you can place a hand there and just let it be here and just recognize it as something that isn't you, that is something that arises, that you are this sacred being, that you are love.
And those things, those parts that we hold on to, they cause a kind of poverty, both the poverty of Shakti, poverty of energy, and also poverty in our life and poverty in the world. And so by invoking Lakshmi, we're invoking the opposite of that, Aishwarya, which means wealth, but it also means divine lordship or goddessship. So we're inviting, it's almost like those parts of us to be like gilded or like turned into gold, for the sake of our path, and also for the sake of the collective liberation.
So let's just take one last moment here in silence just to offer that. And as well as what Harshita just said, just the collective lack, the collective hate, the collective everything, greed, addiction.
Delusion.
You can take a few breaths just in through your nose and out through your mouth. You can gently bow your head in towards that sacred, living, feminine power within. Towards your heart, in the middle, down towards your pelvis, your womb.
I don't know if anyone is watching, but the fire is a living being, and each one, like each one of us, is very unique. And this one was very, very hot. And it was so hot that it caught the spoon on fire that I was offering the ghee with at one point. And it was hard. I don't know how close you were sitting, but like I'm burned.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Look at your leg.
I know. No, I'm like drenched with sweat and a little bit burned. And there's a thing in India, and it's a little bit of a superstition, but I think that there's a beautiful teaching in it where when the priests are offering, their more formal fire ceremonies, you're not supposed to make a face if like the smoke goes in your eyes or something. Or if the flames even go, blow into you or something. You're not supposed to make a face, because it's like you're there in this devotional moment. And there's an expression that says, if you make a face when you're in front of a sacred fire, you'll be born in your next life with that face. It's just a superstitious thing, but there's a beautiful teaching in it that I learned from my guru, which is, the face that you offer to the sacred fire is the face you will attain. And so there's a beautiful symbolism in that of like, what is the face that we offer to the sacred fire of our life? When things get hot, when things get uncomfortable, when things get, we've created it and then it's like too much. Like what is the countenance sorry, not the continents, the countenance that we approach the fires of our life with.
It's beautiful.
That's the face that we will attain. But I feel like for you guys, wherever your prayers were, man, this was an intense fire ceremony.
Yeah. And, I mean, we would love to hear what you experienced, like if something came to you at the end, or just what was it like to just do the mantra? Many of you have done this before. So it's so good just to like share what you experienced, even if like without judgment, right? We're always getting really curious about our experience and taking off any hats of judgment so we can actually be together in an intimate way. So please feel free to take a moment to just share it if you want, or just write it down in your own journal if you don't. And for those of you in Unleashed, we have a video from our good friend Varsha Chowdhury, who lives in Pune, India. She's one of our dear friends. She's gonna be teaching on our next India pilgrimage next January. There's a great video of hers about Lakshmi. And even to those of you that have watched it before, because I know some of you have, it's not that long. It might be worth like having a listen again. I know I have, and every time I hear it, like I hear something new. So if you want to learn more about her, that's there for you guys. And then anyone else, that isn't in the training, but that's in the membership, we'll be kind of diving deeper into this with Free is working, more specifically tomorrow in Body Temple Dance. And then Harshit and I have like 2 spots left for our Ojai retreat that's happening August 25th 5th to the 8th.
25th to the 20th.
And so please reach out via email if you're interested. We can get you some info on that. And I want to read a poem by my dear friend Heidi that feels really connected to everything we're sharing. So I'm going to read that as our closing. I like to close like 7 times when I do anything.
And also just to say that retreat in Ojai, it's like, it's not just like totally open to the public. There's some prerequisites. It's kind of an advanced retreat.
Yeah. And, a lot of people here it would be good for, since many of you are in our worlds. So this is called Secret Blessing. This is a blessing no one can write for you. This is the blessing you will find for yourself, tucked into the crack in the wall, scribbled in the gap between worlds, sheltered beneath the outstretched wing, inscribed within the tender wound. Secret blessing, solace blessing, soothing blessing, shadowed blessing, blessing that steals into the clench of your fist, blessing that blooms into your opening hand, blessing that lights the beckoning path, blessing that sings your new name to you, blessing that sings your new name to you. So we'll give this space a couple more minutes. I have, about 5 minutes or so. If anybody wants to unmute and share your experience, or especially if you have questions or you think you might have a question, you need to like speak around it for a moment, you're welcome to raise your hand or just unmute. We will be checking in with the things in the chat as well, but I would love to just hear from some voices in the community. What was that like for you? Anything connected to anything we shared, over the past hour.
Hello.
Hi.
Can I
And
share?
And if you want to share where you are in the world, if you want to. So
Yeah. I'm Amina. I'm in New Jersey. Yeah, I got a beautiful gift. I got permission to seek deeper. The path is, in my mind, feels like a radical departure from where I come from my faith, so there's some kind of fear that comes up, and I've been at like yoga, like I love yoga. It's just been part of my, but I kind of hesitate when it comes to like exploring the energy of the goddesses and things like that, because in my mind and my teachings and my understanding, it's antithetical to like Islam. And so I'm afraid of learning more, but this is kind of, I'm in a practice of being with what presents itself. And this has been like coming through for me. And I named that fear when Harshada invited us to like think about emancipation. And I wrote it. And then like when Ariana, when you asked us to ask for a gift, I kind of was just open, and I just was like, it was just beautiful. It was like God was like, I know your heart. I know your heart. And like you're seeking and learning.
Mm,
The first word in the Quran is iqra. Iqra is Arabic for read, but it also means seek knowledge.
mm, mm,
So it was
mm,
just like this beautiful affirmation that I'm like
mm.
on my path, you know, and everything's okay.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you, Amina.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Mm. Who else would like to share their experience? Anything you noticed? Anything that came up?
Ooh, Jackie, I'm just going to read that. She says, I felt the intensity, most intense fire ceremony I've attended of y'all so far. I felt myself buzzing or vibrating. Really, I wanted to check my earthquake app, but didn't. I started removing what felt like unseen spider webs from all of my body. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, Jackie, I feel like we've talked about the spider, the spider woman, the spider medicine before. It's very alive in my field.
Here in Ojai, we have to this is something our healer David Elliott told us to do, who's very almost animistic, like connected into the elements and animal spirits and stuff like that. And he suggested for us and stuff that we work through here to periodically go and like de-web the house. Because here in California, it's like must be like the favorite place of all spiders.
Yeah.
But
which is amazing, which I love. Yeah.
But there'll be just like so many spider webs all around the outside of the house. And we go around and just say, we love you and this is too much. Like we just need, like
and then they
too
come
much.
back. Yeah.
But like as a way of like also de-webbing our own field too.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I also, Amina, I want to say this out loud so I don't forget, but I want to connect you to my friend Willow, who's a Sufi and who, shares a lot of mysticism and is very, deeply devoted in that world. And whenever somebody has that as their background, I think what you carry obviously is medicine within itself in terms of the mysticism and how that potentially will connect to Islam and all of that for you. Obviously, you have your own journey with that, which I'm interested in hearing more about as you go along and hearing how that unfolds for you. And our good friend Willow is, leads really amazing zikr, and it's like very rooted in mysticism and this kind of, more non-dual, but deeply respectful of, the culture and all of it. It's very powerful. So I just want to say that out loud and also just to, reflect back something to you after you shared, because it was very powerful and vulnerable, and you're welcome in all of that vulnerability and all of that figuring out, and all of that's very welcome here. It's something that I think everybody goes through on some level in their own ways. So and I want to connect you with Willow because she's just
for sure
a very ecstatic being and very connected to all of that, and she is oftentimes in Body Temple. So yeah.
And also I'll just say, so many of us come from faith that it's not cool to do anything else except for that. That's one of the things about most religious things is they say only do this and don't do anything else. And I think that, sometimes, usually that can be very unhelpful, but it's like when in that case of Islam, the prophet, peace be upon him, gave those kind of instructions, it was something, it was protective so that the people that were working with him could really focus on what he was offering in that case. And it's just the same way if you're working with us, we'll say, maybe lay off the weed. Like you don't need to do plant ceremonies for a minute, do this, like leave the plant ceremonies aside for a minute while you're focusing on this. It's not to say plant ceremonies are haram, they're like bad or that they're evil. It's just like while you're focusing on this is the prescription.
Yeah. And to really get the medicine of it, you know what I mean? Because many of us are going to move through so many different spiritual traditions and, you know, with hopefully a lot of reverence and a lot of appreciation. Yeah, and guidance, right? And like learning and education. But within that, it's like to go deep within it, you know what I mean? And yeah, I appreciate that. And it's just so true because that's just where a lot of us are at, you know. Again, Mirabai Starr, who I mentioned before, in her book Wild Mercy, you know, she just has so many great, she also has a great book called God is Love, which explores Islam, Judaism, and Christianity.
Yeah.
It's amazing. God of love. God of love. Yeah. So, I mean, also you might love that book. But you know, it's like she oftentimes will say, you talk about spiritual promiscuity. I end up saying spiritual polyamory, but you know, but she talks about it not in this way of like being a dabbler, you know, it's not like you're not dabbling. And so like, and also how do we know that? Like, how do we, like, what is it that we need to really know that, like, okay, you know, throughout all cultures, right? When you're deeply rooted in the mysticism of love, we know that that goes, you know, and we can recognize that, you know, like if I meet, you know, a shaman, you know, from Peru, like that's connected to my friend's lineage, it's like, there's a recognition in our eyes, you know, there's a light in my eyes and in their eyes that recognizes what's happening, that is beyond any of the external practices and things that we're doing. There's a recognition of love and of devotion that is deep, you know, that isn't necessarily connected to what it is we're doing or what practices. And totally, that is oftentimes what we say. So we can really get the most juice and education and appreciation for what it is we're exploring, you know?
And what I say is that there is a
Hot
difference
topic.
between, I don't know the way that she says, I think she says polyamorous, but
I think she says promiscuity.
because like
Something
I
like that.
do warn people against spiritual promiscuity, which is, you know, the way that I talk about it, it is the dabbling. It's like getting a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but not really committing to anything. And instead, what I talk about is becoming spiritually omnivorous,
Mhm.
being spiritual omnivores, which mean that we get our spiritual nutrition
Mhm.
from different things. And
Mhm.
oftentimes not necessarily different traditions, but you know,
Mm.
it's important to do your spiritual practices, but it's also important to go to therapy.
Yeah.
It's also important to go to the gym for a lot of people and get massages. And you know, it's like
Yeah.
that rarely today are people going to get all of their spiritual nourishment from one teacher or one tradition or one ashram or one thing.
Yeah.
But that, you know, we have to be omnivorous.
Yeah. I love that.
And look out for,
Yeah.
you know, promiscuity. Look out for when we're just like feeding our egos or collecting
Yeah.
practices or collecting,
Yeah.
you know, different
But then,
things.
and again, it's like becoming more of an identity than a process of decolonizing ourselves from all the conditioning.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And she does use, I need to be specific because you said Mirabai, and then I was like, okay, I need to look it up. But yes, Mirabai does say polyamorous. She talks about her spiritual temperament being polyamorous, and especially because she's a teacher of the feminine wisdom, which across all spiritual traditions has really been buried by, you know, patriarchy. So once you start diving into that level, especially on the feminine level, it's like she talks about, like, you know, she says like there's something to digging one hole and staying with one tradition to really get the true transmission. But she also felt like there was something wrong with her because she was like temperamentally incapable of choosing one tradition. And it, you know, and at the same time, she also, every time she did find a new tradition, she went really deep. I mean, she's like one of the deepest mystics that we know, you know, so, you know, it's all kind of, saying that.
Yeah, promiscuity has a connotation of carelessness.
Yeah, where
Whereas
polyamory has hopefully some good
and,
guidelines.
but also polyamory, we have to say, like in this scene in this day and age, also could be majorly problematic because it's one of those things that again becomes like the polyamory becomes like the spiritual bypass of relationship of like, well, I'm, you know, I'm polyamorous on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Speaking about fire. Yeah, everything is, more nuanced than anything we could say in this moment, but okay. Okay. Yeah, Mike is just talking about ADHD. Yeah, going from hyper focus to freeze gives me a sort of whiplash, even with spiritual stuff, always needing the novelty of a new path. Totally. I can I have ADHD. I can completely relate. I'm feeling very excited to have a 9-month container with y'all to help me stay focused and the ability to go deeper. Totally. This is where communities always serve me best. Thank you, Mike, for sharing that. And I also find that, I think also as a person with ADHD and, always willing to let go of the identification of it, but it seems to also really liberate me at this time. It's like containers and retreats. It's like, I mean, it's part of why I've like made it my life. Like, I don't only lead containers and retreats. I also put myself in them because I don't understand how to function. Like, generally speaking, I just don't understand. The navigation of my energy in like regular world, like meaning day to day is like how people normally live. It's very confusing for me and very intense and very exhausting. So I love a container. It just like liberates me, even though it can seem like, oh, I'm being confined. It's actually like you said, it helps guide the focus. It also helps work with the energies. Like, we don't realize like how much all this work is like, we're working with energies and like how to work energetically, which we all need that like so bad right now.
You're in a container for 9 months. You're not like handcuffed to a pole for 9 months.
Yeah.
That's the difference. Is that you can move within a container.
Totally.
And it's a big enough container to like hold a lot.
Yeah.
It's not just like a commitment for 9 months.
Yeah.
Like that.
And I reflect a lot. The last thing I'll say about that is just, I reflect a lot about that because when I'm on retreats, even when I'm leading them, I have so much more energy, like during and even after. I mean, I held that intention for myself for a long time because I used to get very exhausted doing this work. And I was like, that's not going to fly. But it's just like, I really try. One of my goals right now is like really living my life the way I would if I was leading a retreat, or because I'm just so much more aware of like what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. And this is the time I do this practice, or I need to like work out for like 15 minutes every day if I'm going to be doing all this like space holding. Like, I need to take a nap if I woke up at 5. I got to put that in. Like, I just am so much more aware of my energy in a way because I know it's only for a period of time. It's not like my whole life, that just like, I just throw everything out the window. So anyways, I'm kind of exploring like, what does that look like? And like, if I sneak it into my day-to-days, obviously very imperfectly, like we have kids and it's a mess, but I love that. And I love us being together in that way. It's so helpful. Yes. God of Love by Mirabai Star. Yes. That was the one. God of Love. Yes. Yeah. No, it's a good one. Yeah. It's a really good one. Okay. All right, friends.
Have a good day and track the moon on Saturday night, Sunday morning, the full moon. It's the second Capricorn full moon within this Cancer season. So it's kind of special to have 2 full moons within the same cycle.
Yes.
And this full moon in our tradition is Guru Purnima. So every full moon is dedicated to a different deity or a different expression of the divine. And this is a very special one. It's the anniversary of the day my guru gave me the name Harshada in 1996. So I'm like 28. Amazing. Like I'm in my Saturn return once again. But it's like it's a celebration of that principle, of that notion that awakens our Kundalini, but also guides the Kundalini into our experience of being awake and being free.
Yeah, beautiful. And if anyone has questions, or just like, like I said, sometimes you don't have a specific question, but you want some guidance, like, that's really where I think both of us, I know this is, I think I would say, can safely say both of us really do our best work. You know what I mean? Is like, we're relating to you. So, please, like, definitely, if you're an Unleashed, like, pop it in the container there. Even if you're not sure, even if you're like, I don't know if this makes sense, we will help you make sense. That's just part of what we do. Or we'll help, do the work to understand what you're saying. That's important to us. And then, you can also email. Harshita has this, has these beautiful containers for private work. So you can definitely reach out to Harshita if you're feeling that intuitively. We'll put that in our replay, like how to reach out to him. And just feel free to just like, even if you're somebody who doesn't share a lot in groups, even if you're, it's intense, I get it. And just know that most people are not paying attention to anybody other than themselves. This is like something I always say. It's terrible to say, but in this space, we have a lot of people like paying attention to one another because this is like a very generous community. But in general, like everybody's got a full load, like they're living full lives. So if you share, like you're going to be caught by like a few of us, and so sometimes it helps to think about it like that than like I'm sharing in this whole group and that's so scary, especially for those of you that are more introverted. And you can always send me an email, support@bodytemple.church, and B and I will be the only people receiving it. So yeah, I just want to encourage you to reach out and know that we're here for you on the many levels that we can be and that we like to be. So what else? I think that's it. It's 10:28, 10:29. I always like staying to the last moment. Okay. Yay. So nice to see you, Natasha, Daria, Vivian, Sherry. Hello. Okay. Hi.
Okay. Blessed day, everyone.
Bye. If you want to
Bye.
unmute, say bye. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Ciao.
Hi, love you.
Bye.
Love you all.
Bye.
Bye.